Welcome back. From the violence of East Timor to the turmoil of another Southeast Asian country. Imagine, if you can, the trauma of having your brothers, sisters and parents go missing. But what about an entire village? Well, that's what's been happening in Sri Lanka during years of bloody ethnic clashes. Susan Yu now reports on an endemic problem and how people are remembering their lost and loved ones.
This is an event we started in around 1988, and which was very intense up to about 1990 in the south. But in the north, it is something that goes on still even now.
In the past 27 years, the Tamil Tigers' battle for an independent homeland has claimed 58,000 lives, with even more unaccounted for.
At least 30,000 officially recognized cases. The unofficial record is over 70,000.
Disappearances became endemic in the late 80s and early 90s, when ethnic tensions between the Sinhalese and Tamil separatists erupted in violence. The then Sri Lankan government sponsored most of the disappearances with the help of paramilitary groups. The majority of the victims, civilians, caught in the political crossfire.
About 15% of the disappearances are people below 19 years of age. Around 64% are below 29 years of age.
Every instance is one too many, and of course when it gets to that sort of situation and it's done on such a wide scale, it becomes increasingly difficult to later find and identify culprits or take any useful action.
What has been identified are mass graves, about a dozen of them, recently discovered mostly in the south.
In the north, it is something that goes on still even now. You would have seen in the recent times this mass grave, digging of the mass grave in Jaffna.
The findings, though, bring little consolation for families of the missing.
The time was midnight. Some armed persons entered our house by force. They threatened us and abducted my two sons, the eldest and youngest one, while they were still sleeping. They told us they would return our children after a short time, but they didn't come back yet. That day, my middle son was in the watch hut on his farm. They had taken him also. Now I have lost my three sons.
When I talked with her, and he was really shocked with the emotion.
Eugene So has spent the last 6 weeks in Sri Lanka to look into the phenomenon of missing persons. He says South Korea also experienced mass disappearances during the country's military rule, and So understands why patience can be hard to maintain.
I found that lots of people get frustrated and fed up with all those the disappearance issue after the tragic event happened quite a time ago.
Now, it is very difficult to pin individual responsibility, because most of the witnesses are the police and military people, and they have the protection of the state.
Since 1994, President Chandrika Kumaratunga's government has set up several commissions to look into the issue of disappearances. And just last April, during the 55th session of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, the government defended its efforts in prosecuting those responsible. In its statement, Sri Lanka's mission in Geneva wrote that the government is carrying out criminal investigations into 1,681 cases. So far, 6 military personnel and 1 civilian have been prosecuted. They were found guilty this year for the disappearance of more than a dozen students.
In terms of prosecution, government has been prosecuting isolated middle-level police officers or military officials, but there have been lots of other people in a higher level. They are very reluctant to touch or to prosecute, and these people are still in high positions.
So fear is still on the ground in Sri Lanka.
Exactly.
And for families of the missing, more needs to be done, as illustrated in this mother's testimony.
We tried our best to find our children. We informed all the responsible persons, up to the president at that time, but all were in vain.
Families still feel lots of hope when you see a government give you money for their lost son or daughter, and on the other hand, those who have killed their daughter or son, they are still in the police or in the army. They are still been working there.
Many believe the present People's Alliance Party government has fallen short of its commitments.
But whenever they change the government, they pledged and they promised a lot of things. They promised to pursue the perpetrator to bring the justice.
Human rights groups are hoping the international community will put pressure on Sri Lanka to produce more prosecutions and to curb the extrajudicial powers of its security forces. With the presidential and parliamentary elections set for 2000 and opposition parties rejecting the government's peace plan, many fear the government will see a resurgence of violence and disappearances. To highlight the problem, the United Nations Commission on Human Rights unanimously passed a resolution this year on the issue. But calls are growing for the body to draft a convention on the missing, which would make mass disappearances a crime against humanity. That would mean government officials could be held responsible for acts against humanity even after they're out of office. For now, an unconventional memorial has been put together for not just those who've disappeared in Sri Lanka, but elsewhere in Asia.
For the families, that they, when they see such a memorial has been built, that also kind of encouragement for them not to give up their fight against finding the truth of their loved ones.
The website was launched last December, and its organizers say it's proving to be a source of strength. And on the ground, Sri Lankans may soon see another reminder.
If they are able to erect a really huge, gigantic monument for those who are killed and disappeared, that monument will constantly remind the public what is this all about, and they can learn from the past history.
And for the perpetrators of disappearances, many hope such a reminder will be a stark monument for a better future.
Susan Yu reporting on the disappeared of Sri Lanka, a country which comes second only to Iraq in the number of missing cases.